On today's podcast, your hosts, TC and Chris Nicole, discuss their philosophy on power building and which clientele can best benefit from that style of training. Here we are on another episode of our Reckless Training podcast. Currently, we don't have a name for it, so that's
Currently
it's a baby with no name. But we wanted to make sure that we stayed on top of recording some content so that when we do name this thing, I mean, obviously, if you're listening, it has a name. It's been well thought out and it's launched. So today is a topic that is fairly new to me. I've always lived in the bodybuilding world. Okay, not always, but since
for your,
Yeah.
professional athletic
as far
career.
back as I can remember, a whole 5 years. But it has been something that I think innately has been part of your regiment, TC. So now we
Yes.
just have names and philosophies, putting the puzzle pieces together, and have developed a specific style that I've been the recipient of, and I've seen a lot of good results. So I'm excited to talk about it because I think there's a lot of questions around power build or powerlifting versus bodybuilding and how to set up your training. Can you, especially for a woman, like, can you be strong but not look huge and blocky? Can you, and for like males, can you really achieve that strong physique but also look good? I think we kind of touched on that in the last podcast. So that's my long-winded intro.
Yeah.
So why don't we just get right to it?
Yeah, so you found a definition of
I
power build
Googled it.
online?
Yeah,
do you want to go ahead and read that?
there's not
Maybe
an
we'll expand on
actual definition as of right now.
Yeah, I would say it's a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, okay, so going back in time to the original Mr. America competition, that was a true power building competition, right? There's a bodybuilding show, there's powerlifting, but also actually with the initial Mr. America competitions, there was a social aspect as well. And it was like, how good, if you're a good citizen. So it
What?
was really like truly, yeah, it was like a Mr. America, like kind of like a beauty pageant kind of thing with a strength
Oh, cool.
aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, back in the day, and then people got more and more specified in their training and their desire for, what they wanted to pursue. So they kind of branched out. You got bodybuilding competitions. You're not going to be an elite level powerlifter and also an elite level bodybuilder. That's kind of, the rhetoric that's put out there, which I would say it's true. You can do anything. You can do one thing exceptionally well. You can do two things okay, and you can do three or more things poorly. Yeah, so I think that is very important to remember. So a lot of people also have, full-time jobs. They have families. So your lifting is not just, the only thing in your life. So even if you're going to say, well, okay, so I can do two things pretty well, so I'm going to do bodybuilding and powerlifting, you forget about the fact that, okay, then you also have your job, you also have your family, you also have your day-to-day life that you have to take care of. So I just kind of went off on a rambling spout. Let's back up a little bit, and you can go ahead and read that definition.
The first definition that I found when I Googled is from, I think it's a training website. Everything is, if you Google what is power building, this definition did come up for me first, so I'll read that one. It says power building is a blend of the three main powerlifting lifts. So that's your squat, bench, and deadlift, combined with bodybuilding accessory and volume to evoke more muscle growth and development. And then it goes on to say, the idea is, why not have the strength of an ox and the physique of a Greek god? They just described UTC.
Perfection. Wait, no.
Oh,
I wasn't saying that. So, okay, so that's, really not a terrible definition. I would say it's probably incomplete in terms of the intentionality that we put behind our programming here at Reckless Training. Because I would take it a step further, because powerlifting teaches you maximum exertion. And I'm a big fan of reminding people that maximum effort is a learned characteristic. It's a learned trait.
Yeah, we
It
just
is
had this
hard
talk
to
this
do.
week as I'm trying to build up
Yeah.
some strength.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all heavy.
It's hard. Yeah, it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to bring lighter weights closer to failure, rather than picking some heavier weights that are it's like right near your failure point and forcing yourself mentally to go through the steps and move
I
that
would
weight
agree.
with
Yeah.
perfect form. So, I think that powerlifting really has the opportunity to kind of teach physique athletes a different way of
Sure.
training.
Yes.
But it also helps them to push harder in the gym with their other lifts, because then you carry that same mentality over into your accessories. You carry that same progressive overload mentality into your accessories, and you're constantly pushing for more, whether it's more reps or more weight. So I think it has
I do
a
think
real benefit there.
so for our audience, I'm a bodybuilder or bikini athlete. I'm in the physique category, and when I met TC, he was strictly a power lifter. So we're coming from two different worlds, and our years together have shown a lot of crossover. So that's why power building is something that we really like to share and implement in our coaching styles. But I would agree with that about the max effort. I think that intensity was something that I didn't understand completely. My workouts were hard, but I didn't understand the level of intensity because I had never pushed myself to reach for that like max effort, that end goal. Where's the line? Like I never
Sure.
went anywhere
Yeah.
near that. I was just like, oh, okay, I'm tired. I have a pump. Like that was a good workout, but it's very different when you're asking, like I just got programming this week that was a conventional deadlift with a 3 rep max, and finding that weight, I'm still on the quest for it, because you think that this is the weight where I'll stop at 3, because that's how you would define it, right? You can't do another rep. You pretty much are exhausted after the 3.
Sure, yeah. So for your purposes specifically, I would say that you're actually looking for
Okay.
a 4 rep max to use. You want to leave
Sure.
like 1 or 2 reps in the tank to make sure that we look for
Yes.
technical failure, okay,
Yes.
not mechanical
Yeah, yeah.
failure. So
Like learning some of these different things that are programmed into my training is a lot of fun. It's a cool thing to focus on in my improvement season. I'm kind of like opening my I don't know what the word is, but I'm being more open to like different strategies and different training styles. So I'm embracing the
yeah.
power building just a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, I was talking about the intensity factor. So finding that is something from my previous training as a bodybuilder was interesting to find, kind of like leaning a little bit into the powerlifting pool.
Sure. Which we kind of like touched on that, over the years we've done some max outs. You've pulled some heavy deadlifts, you've done some heavy axle wheel or wagon wheel deadlifts. We haven't done anything super heavy on squat yet, but you have been squatting 150, 160,
Yeah.
something like that for like 8 reps. So 225 is coming there too. So we're in this off season, we're really pushing the weight for that maximum effort.
Yeah, exactly.
For that reason.
So yes, so your philosophy about power building and what that means for you. I guess we can go more into the details. I kind of shared a little bit of like what training has been for me. Did I cut you off on?
No, that's okay. Let's just
Okay.
kind of expand on that. So
Yes.
right now you're in your off season, and you are weighing
We can
more
tell the
than you did on
audience.
stage.
Sure.
The number doesn't really matter, right? I mean, you're up from your stage weight, and as any competitor out there knows, as soon as you are up from your stage weight, you know it and you see it. You see those blurred lines, and you hated dieting, but
What
now
have I
you hate
done?
reversing.
You can't hate all the phases. You have to find the
Yes.
things that you like
So-
about each one and focus on those.
Exactly. And that is kind of what, that's another avenue that power building really gives to, physique athletes
Mm-hmm.
for your off season. So now, yeah, you're getting a little thicker, but first of all, it's great. Like you look great, but now you're starting to
Yeah.
feel super strong. And that is now you can chase those PR goals instead of, your aesthetic goal. Like
Yes.
that'll come next year. You'll lean back out, you'll be back on stage, and it'll be like, none of this ever happened except you have a
Yeah,
ton more
and I
muscle.
think that when you go through a dieting phase, and it's a long extended one, not even if it's a long extended one, when you're in the weeds of like low calorie, high activity, your workouts are less enjoyable. They're more of a
Mm-hmm.
like, they're more of a grind. They're less like you get in the zone, you feel good about yourself. It's more like, okay, I need to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing.
You zone out a little bit in between
Where am
set. Oh,
I?
come back
When
there.
is my next
Yeah.
meal?
Yeah.
So I think that when you come out of that, like I was very excited to be like, okay, I know that food is there. Training is going to be more enjoyable. That's one aspect as an athlete that I just love. I love training. So it was nice to have that back in my repertoire. It wasn't being sacrificed by, extra cardio. But yes, the scale definitely was something because and I think a lot of athletes out there that are that are in bodybuilding, they know when you have a show coming up, your goals in front of you are aesthetic. So the scale goes down. You look just like grainy and like an alien, and you have all the veins and the cuts, and each week you see a little bit more progress, and that's validating. So while you're sacrificing the fun gym workouts, and here and there you have some really good ones, they surprise you,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
they're not as frequent. When you transition
Mm-hmm.
into now I'm eating more food, naturally the body starts to put on a little bit of body fat, and that's a healthy place to be, but it can be a little bit discouraging because you now have to realign your goals. So now my aesthetics are not my measure of progress, and so I think like
Mm-hmm.
re-shifting back into training and specific goals in that aspect has been really fun, and has helped like my self-esteem and confidence too. And it's not just like going back and doing the same workouts. Like they're not the same workouts I was doing when I was in a dieting phase. They're stretching
Yeah.
me in different aspects. So it's a new challenge. And for that athletic mindset, um, it's just I think a very healthy place to be. And I've had clients message me and tell me while they're transitioning into their improvement season, they're hitting PRs, they're squatting. Oh my gosh, these athletes, they keep me on my toes. I'm like, you're squatting what? Okay, TC, I need to I need to do better. But yeah, I just went on a tangent. But
No, that's great. It's great to hear your perspective on how, this style of training has, kind of changed
mhm.
your perspective on your own training and your own prep and your own like prep season cycle, right? And the chapters of your prep career, so to speak.
I like that it's different.
I just Yeah, yeah. It
Hmm.
really it keeps you motivated. It keeps you driving forward. Um and it kind of like you said earlier, it gets you through the weeds of both aspects of the prep. So like the cutting, because like you said, during the cut you have the
Yeah.
shreds to look forward to, but then your reverse, you have your
Yes.
PRs to look forward to. So, and I just recently did my first bodybuilding show, and so Chris is looking for her first powerlifting meet to sign up for.
Conveniently took a swig of water at that. Perfect timing. Yeah, yeah, let's do it. If you're on YouTube, you can see
Yeah,
my face.
so but in all seriousness, it has definitely been very beneficial for her mentality. Like I've definitely seen that. And that's not to say that all of her workouts in her reverse season have been
Right.
good. Like this weekend, yeah, two
Oof.
bad workouts in a row. But sometimes you're just in a mental space that doesn't allow for that kind
Hmm.
of effort and intensity.
All right, so we talked about how it's good for a mentality in the off season and PRs and all that good stuff, but how is the style training still fulfilling the goal of a bodybuilder, which is primarily always to put more muscle on? Yeah.
Hypertrophy. Yeah. Good question. So, excuse me, hang on. Okay, so another way we talked about maximum intensity, right? And we talked about how power lifts and finding your true maximum effort numbers can help you mentally for that maximum effort intensity. The other way that it can help, and the way that I use it in our training, is I use it to, let me back up. Your muscle fibers, for anyone out there who doesn't know, each of your individual muscle fibers are all or nothing potentiated. Okay, so that means when you lift up this small packet of core nutritionals hydrate, you have a certain number of muscle fibers, just enough muscle fibers needed to lift this, but all of those muscle fibers are 100% activated. Now, it may only be activating 2% of the muscle fibers in your muscle belly, but those muscle fibers are 100% activated. Now, when you lift heavier weight, you activate more and more muscle fibers to move that weight. You activate as many muscle fibers as needed in order to move the weight that you're trying to move. So the reason we work up to a maximum, like a top set, so that we call it a top triple when you're looking for that 3-rep max, is to get as many muscle fibers activated as possible. And now that those muscle fibers are innervated, they're more likely to be used in the future. So then we go to our hypertrophy, our volume sets, or our back down sets, whether it's 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, however many you have. Ideally, we're using all of those muscle fibers to lift that weight. And now you don't need to use all those muscle fibers to lift the weight, because now you've dropped the weight down. But you have that mind to muscle connection, and you can actively try to activate
And
more
I
muscle
fought
fibers.
this theory in the beginning. I was like, do not put more weight on that bar. Specifically a hip thrust.
Yeah.
This is what was happening. Do not put more weight on that bar. I can't feel my glutes. And I'm reaching a point of, it's just like my whole body is lifting this bar, and I'm not isolating the muscle that I'm trying to focus on. But did it anyways.
Then you do
But
those
and
drop
that's what
down sets.
happened is I got to a point where I was just like, it was a high level of exertion, and then pulled weight down, and I was able to do more reps at a higher weight, and I felt like my mind muscle connection was like, it was lit up. Like, that is exactly what I felt. I felt my glutes. It kind of was like, if you're looking through a camera lens, everything can be super blurry, and you just like turn it to sharpen the image, and that lens like sharpened in on my glutes, and I was hip thrusting a heavier amount of weight, like I said, for more reps. And what an ego boost when you get to that point. So it was that
Yeah.
that overreaching aspect, and then those drop downs. I love it. I love it now.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so the heavier weight gets all of your, more of your glute fibers activated, so that when you come back down and you're being intentional about trying to isolate your glutes and really only use them for that hip thrust, now all of those motor units that have been innervated with the heavier hip thrust, now you can use those, and your body knows where to recruit more muscle fibers from if it needs more. It's going to keep pulling from your glutes until they're used up, but ideally our drop down sets, the weight we choose is perfect to where it's actively getting 100% of your muscle fibers in your glutes for the hip thrust, for example, but not in excess of secondary movers
And technical
stabilizer
failure is a
muscles.
really important thing. So I'm not hip thrusting as much weight as I can with this. I mean, it's probably not a completely beautiful form, but it's not massively ugly, and still with that focus of good technique, correct?
Yeah, so I probably don't put it in every single one of my exercise descriptions. But I'm going to say in the vast majority of them, I say practice perfect form. Okay, and the reason I write it like that is because that's what we're doing. Every single rep is an opportunity for you to improve upon your technique and improve on your form and make it more beneficial for building the muscles that you're trying to build with that exercise. So with every single set and every single rep, we should be aiming for that perfect form. And just like you said, when you start to not feel it on your heavier sets, that's okay, because it's a heavy compound lift and it's supposed to be teaching your body. So that's the third thing, is it teaches your body how to work as one cohesive unit. So NASM has the regional interdependence model, right? And it's basically all that says is in different parts of your body work together, and sometimes pain transfers from other parts of your body, and your body's crazy,
Your body's
basically.
crazy.
Yeah. But it adapts
Right.
to whatever loads you put on it, right? So whatever it needs to do, it's going to do. It's going to figure out how to do it. So that's where, unfortunately, where some of these compensation patterns come from, because your body is exceptionally resilient. And if you have a low back injury, you're going to figure out how to move around that injury. You're going to figure out how to move around that pain. So, a lot of times we have to uncover these movement issues, and a lot of times it comes from recording your heavy compound lift sets, right? It's a lot easier to hide these, technique deficiencies and the length tension relationship imbalances in your muscles when you're doing lighter weights, even for compound lifts. But once you start putting more weight on that bar, man, it's going to put a magnifying glass
That's a
on all
great
those
point.
compensation
Yeah,
patterns.
technique, I think, is definitely something that you've honed in on, and that's come from, your desire to move the most amount of weight. And
Yeah.
so small
Yep.
technique cues and pointers help make that lift more efficient. I would guess I'm just making an assumption
Yeah.
here. And that is, I don't think some technique is something that gets highlighted or hasn't been highlighted as much in my bodybuilding training. So,
People talk about proper form all the time, but they don't necessarily dissect what
Yes.
it is. And I was reading this, I think the book's called All About Powerlifting or something like that. And it goes through like an interview with a guy, and then a section about him describing the squat and training protocols for it, and then an interview with another guy, and then his, theory and blah, blah, blah. And I thought it was very interesting that the first two guys on there were like polar opposites. One guy said, just squat. That's all you need to do. Just squat. And the other guy was a mathematician, a professor of mathematics. And he said, you need training frequency. You have to practice the squat. It's technical, this, that, and the other. And that the first guy was technically proficient in the squat. Otherwise, he
Sure.
never would have squatted 1,000 pounds, right? I mean, this guy's an obscenely strong squatter. But because it just came naturally to him, he isn't able to teach that aspect,
Right.
which we've talked about before. We've talked about how it's the best teachers are those who struggled with conquering
Yes.
whatever they're teaching, right? And before my injury, I've told you this too. I think I would have been a terrible coach because lifting just came very easily to me. So God blessed me with this low back injury, and I've had to work through. I've found all these compensation patterns, and a lot of them come from driving. So a lot of our clients have the exact same thing. And I've been having to work through that to get my compound lifts back feeling straight and square and centered again. But it's been an incredible journey and very frustrating sometimes, but definitely very gratifying as well, because I'm able to pass that information on to you and the rest of our athletes as well. So.
There's one more thing I wanted to talk about, and then we can transition in the opposite direction. But I do feel like another thing besides like technique focus is like full body movements. Like powerlifting is a lot of using your entire body to move weight. Yes.
Move the most weight possible.
Right.
That's powerlifting.
And
yeah.
in like bodybuilding it's not for everybody, but it can become very isolated on specific muscle groups. So whatever you're trying to build gets all of the volume, and everything else kind of diminishes because we don't want big, I don't know, quads for bikini, or we don't want big biceps for bikini. So we just hit shoulders and glutes all day, every day.
Yeah, obliques and
Another
adductors
one, yeah.
are big
So
too.
I think like doing some training that's asked my body to work as a unit has been very challenging, but I've felt a lot of reward from it, not just from like my physique feeling stronger and being able to actually isolate those muscle groups better because it knows how to work. Yeah.
Stabilize. Yeah,
Right. But
they can
also just from
stabilize.
like day-to-day life, feeling stronger and right.
Which is our goal.
And same for
right?
posing.
At the end of the day.
Like if my body
Mm-hmm.
knows how to be rigid for a deadlift, it's going to be able to hold me up on stage. And so there's a lot of crossover there, but that's one thing that I would say, doing full body movements with aggressive weight has actually helped in those areas. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point. You brought up posing, which your compound lifts, I would say they directly
mm-hmm.
translate to, posing improvements because you're
Yeah.
you're more solid on stage. Um, the other thing is, I feel like powerlifting training. Now, obviously, powerlifting specific, you're not going to do that for bodybuilding. But some bodybuilders shy away from some of the compound lifts because they're afraid of overbuilding their, let's just say, their
That's the
midsection
big
and
one.
making
Yeah.
it bigger.
That's the one that a lot of people have
Hmm.
concerns over.
I think what's really important to remember is how hard it is to build muscle. Okay, how much volume do you need to make your chest bigger or your delts bigger or your glutes bigger? And if you equate that to your abdominal training, if you're not doing a ton of extra abdominal accessory work and all you're doing is learning how to stabilize through your compound lifts, your rectus abdominis and your obliques are not going to get enormous. Your transverse abdominis is probably going to get a lot better, especially if you squat and deadlift without a belt, because you're concentrating on pulling it in to brace instead of pushing out
Yeah.
into that belt to brace. So there are some tricks, like you haven't used a belt yet in any of your training. You've been doing, I mean, you're moving weight and you're not using a belt, but that's the purpose. And you can see that your core is so super solid in your training videos, which is exactly what we're looking for. Because that allows you to feel things in different places. Like squats, for example, if you don't keep your hips under you, if you have weak adductors and you can't keep your hips under you to squat, you're not working the bottom of your glute max.
Yes.
It's just not happening. So yeah, you're going to come out of the hole, and that's why your
Yes.
butt rises first with a lot of people. You do the good morning squat. So it's generally speaking, it's weak adductors and then, subsequently weak glutes because they're not getting worked. So all these things, all these factors come into play and come together to really create a much more well-rounded training protocol for the bodybuilding athlete. We want to, as we've discussed before, we want to make sure that you are first and foremost comfortable in your body. So, relatively pain-free on a daily basis. You can move. You can perform any daily tasks
Right.
required of you. Your body is balanced. We're not dealing with pain or anything in your hips or your low back from bending over a certain way, or your traps aren't super tight. You're not going to pull muscle when you sneeze. So and then we're back to the aesthetic
And when
goal.
you have
So we're
those
building
days
that
of
back up.
long, like, activity spouts and you have low food, so you don't have a lot of fuel coming in. That's one thing that I noticed this year in my prep is I just felt better walking around. Didn't feel like I was just gonna fall over. Yeah,
Zombie.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I have enough factors that are telling me that, you know, I could use a little bit more fuel or a little bit more rest. But I at least had a body that felt stronger trying to execute those things. So,
Sure.
okay, let's talk about how, because, yeah.
The flip
And
side.
since we've been talking about
Yeah.
training, I think it's appropriate to kind of like just start there. So you have been powerlifting. You also have done hypertrophy training. That's not like foreign to you.
Yeah, I grew up reading Muscle and Fitness magazine, which is a bodybuilding magazine. Okay. My high school football and wrestling coach was also the owner of 100% Raw Powerlifting Federation, so he's a big powerlifter. So I kind of had it in my brain, but I didn't compete in high school. I kind of fell off from lifting in college. And it wasn't until years and years later, so like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, 2018, that I kind of got back into lifting and powerlifting
But then you
again.
started, you had the goal of a bodybuilding show this year. So how did that change
Yeah.
for you?
So I've always wanted to look good, right? I've always hit the mirror
The
muscles,
mirror
so
muscle.
to speak. Yeah. So now, having said that, I've always wanted
Yeah.
to be strong. So in any training session, I pretty much exclusively used 8 to 12 rep range for every single exercise. And if I could do 12 reps for 3 sets, I'm going to open weight the next session. So that kind of like that was my hybrid approach in the beginning, and I think it gave me an exceptionally good platform to build off of into a good powerlifting career. So my very first powerlifting competition, I was an 83 kilo lifter, totaled 627.5 kilograms. It was enough to qualify me for Raw Nationals. So it's gone up since then. But my training has definitely changed, and it's definitely because of that injury. So let's fast forward to when I injured myself. I was doing mostly compound lifts. I wasn't doing a lot of mobility work. Um, I was really taking that whole training specificity thing to heart and saying this is all I need to do because this is all I want to get good at. And it was working. You know, I was working linear progression, and shoot, man, if I wasn't just climbing up week after week, yeah, I had some plateaus, but for the most part, week after week, I was climbing up. And the very first thing that I did to incorporate bodybuilding into my powerlifting training was track
Wait,
macros.
don't get into the nutrition yet.
And
We'll talk about that.
why not?
I want to know how,
Okay.
not just, this
Okay, so
whole
you just want training.
episode's about what I want to know.
So, okay. Yeah, okay, so training. So fast forward, I got injured. I kind of wallow around for a couple years where I'm like trying to do stuff in a Planet Fitness while we're driving around, and um, it's not really working. I'm banging my head against the wall because I
Yeah.
just want to be a power lifter. All I want to do is squat,
Yeah.
bench, and deadlift heavy, and I can't do it because my back hurts, and now I can't do it because my hip hurts, and it's just I was dealing with kind of an identity crisis. So I needed to mentally switch gears. So that was why I changed, and that's why I really put a lot more emphasis on my hypertrophy accessories, my isolation work, and my body positioning exercises.
Was it in an effort
Um,
to get back to powerlifting? Was it an effort to just give yourself a different goal? Like, what made you, I have to train
so
something?
my yeah, so I am kind of a
Yeah.
carrot chaser, right? So I like having that goal at the end of the road. But yes, it was specifically to give myself a time frame to say, okay, I cannot squat, bench, and deadlift super heavy for this time frame because I'm prepping for a bodybuilding show. And then by the time the show comes up, my body will be healed and it will feel solid and even again, and I can start, doing heavy SBD days again. So after my first show, I'm not 100%, but I'm definitely getting there, and I think I have identified all of my compensation patterns. So we're making a lot more headway, and obviously once the problem is identified, you can make a lot more
And you think
progress
that
on it a lot
training
quicker.
style helped you hone in on some problems?
I think the more relaxed approach
Ah,
to my
okay.
training, it wasn't I need to do this, I need to
Yes.
do this, I need to do this. It was, well, I can't do what I want to do, so I might as well go in the
Yeah,
gym and figure
okay.
something out. And that was how my training sessions started.
Exploratory.
And for months, that was the intensity level. And yeah, like towards the end of my workout, I'd feel a pretty good connection. I might get a little pump or something, but it was much lower. And man, if you try to get an athlete to work out with that intensity level and like, tell them that your job right now is
Ugh.
communicating with your body, it's not beating the crap out of your body, forget it.
Yeah. That's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, so I try to incorporate that kind of stuff within the exercises, within the workouts that I program, specifically for that reason. But yeah, so as I figured more and more things out, because how many times did I come into you and say, babe, I figured it out. I think I figured it out. I
It's
think I
still
figured
happening. It's
it out.
still
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, I just said it 5 minutes ago.
But to your credit, you are figuring things out.
Yeah, and every time I figure something out, it opens up the door to something else. Because for months, after my low back stopped hurting, my hips started hurting, and then for months I was just trying to stretch it out, and it would give me momentary relief, but nothing lasting. And sometimes it would be even worse the next day. So, like I said, we're finally getting somewhere. I believe that yes, the isolation work, the accessory work, the hypertrophy work has helped. I think posing has been a huge boon to evening everything out again.
Okay. So, from what I'm hearing, the training helped you still have a goal in front of you. Still
It
gave
helps
you
me identify the kinesthetic movement pattern compensations.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because you went in there with intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily like, I'm just going to build a big chest now.
Yeah.
It was more of,
I'm still trying to figure it out, I'm
Right,
still trying to figure
right.
out what's going on. That was
Yes.
still my first goal.
yes.
Mhm.
But that training style was different than what you had done before.
Sure.
So, and
Yeah.
it was difficult, I would assume, shifting.
It was kind of fun because I get to build again the mirror muscles, right? So now we're switching to bodybuilding. So now I get to focus on my rehab, so my scapula control, my upper back mobility and strength, and my glute strength, my hip mobility, and then I get to go do chest, shoulders, and lats.
Let's be real. TC has gotten stopped everywhere we go. TC gets stopped. People need to he's a piece of meat out
Yeah.
there, everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's encouraging for people to tell you,
Leaning out has been fun.
you look good.
Yeah.
Or-
But the other thing is I've been working out for 20 years, right? On and off, but I've been in the gym since I was 13, and I think a lot of people discount that.
Sure.
When I step on stage, yeah, it's my first show, but I'm 32 and I've been working out for a couple years. So,
More than a couple.
yeah,
Since the
so
womb.
yes,
since
I'm
the-
natural. I'm a natural athlete. Yes, I've been working for a very long time, and yes, my workout sessions are exceptionally intentional and intense.
Mm-hmm.
So especially at this point where we're starting to ramp everything back up again, right? So I'm starting to squat heavy again. I'm starting to bench heavy again. My torso is starting to feel like one complete unit again.
So that shift in training has helped
Sure.
you
yep,
bring back in some of those compound lifts.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. And talk to us about posing, because that seems to have been, I've watched you and watched the videos of you posing over and over again. And it's more light bulb moments, it seems like, for you. So tell
Yep.
us how posing has actually helped you in some of how you're utilizing your body for powerlifting movements as well.
Sure. So, first of all, I'm not going to say I have OCD, but I'm very particular. And anyone who's gotten a technique feedback video from me knows how particular I can be.
Yeah.
And I would even be willing to bet that I saw 5 other things that I didn't talk about in that video that I sent to you.
Thank you for not overloading me. I just need to hear positive and correction and
Yes, and all of our athletes, make sure you thank Chris Nicole for going through my beta testing, where I did just dump everything that I saw on her all at once.
yeah. We
So-
learned.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm very particular about, my eye for movement, and also body positioning.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to say it's relatively easy for me to look at someone's positioning in a picture or on stage and figure out what I have to do to replicate that look.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, it's not always easy because I don't have full control over my body yet.
Correct.
So, especially my hips, my lumbopelvic hip complex, still has a lot of issues and inactive muscle groups that are not responding to my call exactly the way I want them to.
Mm-hmm.
But that basically just shines a magnifying glass on those issues, right? So now I know that I have to do a lot more work on my hips and opening up my hips and doing hip control stuff like hip airplanes and single leg squats and single leg glute bridge holds and all the super fun stuff, like that for that hip control. And that's just one aspect. So the other thing is in my lat spread, it's blatantly obvious that my right scapula is super stuck for whatever reason. And now I know I feel like some levator tension in my right side. I know that I hold my phone in my right hand when I'm reviewing videos, and my left shoulder goes down and my right one comes up because I'm tensing up as I rewatch my videos because I'm thinking about bracing. And so I've recently started trying to hold in my left hand, pull my left shoulder forward because I have my backwards left hand lean. My left obliques aren't as activated as I need to be. So I've been so intentional with all of these tiny little everyday things that you don't even think about. Driving, sitting down on the toilet, getting up from sitting down and eating, writing, how I sit at the computer, how I'm getting up off the bench, how I rack the weight on the bench. I always look to the left. I noticed that today I was doing incline press.
Do you ever get tired of looking at all of... No, it's exciting for you.
Yeah, I love it. Yep. But like I've told you in the past, I really view this injury as God telling me, okay, these are your powerlifting goals. That's great. You can do that. But you have to be perfect. And you are not mentally mature enough to execute perfect technique on these lifts. Now, having said that, I was recording myself. I was watching every single one of my working sets. I would watch back.
Yeah.
The only reason I went on Instagram was to look at elite level lifters and look at their form and analyze it. Look at their foot placement. Look at their ankle placement. Look at their knee placement, their hips, and their shoulders, and the bar placement on their back, and their head positioning. So I was exceptionally intentional, but not enough for what I want to do. And what I want to do is crazy, but that's okay. It's a dial. And I'm someone, you know me, babe. I'm going to run until I hit that line. I'm going to run a couple steps past and be like, oh, crap, that was the line.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple
I'll
times.
just wait for you to come back.
Yep.
He'll come back.
So my dial is perpetually on 11
Yeah.
out of 10. But for athletes, we dial it to wherever they need to be. Some of them are also on 11 with me. And some of them are just starting out and, they're on 2 or 3, just, getting their feet wet.
Right.
That's great. You're on your own journey and you need to be exactly where you are so that you can build into exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So
side chest. And you've gotten some posing. I've learned from, Olympia posing coaches and judges.
Yep.
So you're going through those positions and holding them and isolating muscles and for those of you that don't know, he's men's classic. That's the category he is in bodybuilding. So you have to flex and control everything. You're getting judged on everything.
Entire body.
So, and you have to do it all at once. It's not like, okay, let's do an arm flex. They're checking out your abs, your chest, your legs, proportions, everything. So it's not just flexing it, it's the illusion of making it most appealing or aesthetic. That's a very aesthetic category. I mean, I think all categories have some aspect of aesthetics, but it's the sculpture. Men's classic is literally like the Greek god sculpture, what everybody
Proportions.
Yeah. So have you noticed, like, with your sessions with posing coaches and stuff like that you've uncovered some issues or what has that challenged you for your physique as well?
So first of all, if you're a bodybuilding competitor and you have not had an in-person session with a good posing coach, you need to do so. They are 100 times harder than any of your hardest posing sessions. I don't care if you're in the sauna. I don't care if you're on the sun. It doesn't matter. Go to a posing coach and have them run you through these poses because they're going to have you hold it and you're going to be trying as hard as you can for these people, right? You want to look as good as you can in this posing session.
Yeah.
This is an Olympian athlete. This is a professional judge sitting in, help me out, give me cues, telling me what I should be doing. So I'm going to do it as well as I can.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're sweating your butt off because like, holy cow, it's a full body isometric. You think a plank is hard?
Yeah.
It's a full body isometric contraction. And then he just tells you to get into your next pose. So you like breathe for 2 seconds and then get into your next pose and then hold that one as hard as you can. So like you need to have posing sessions with other people. It's just like having training sessions with other people. They're
Yeah.
going to keep you honest, on your squat depth, on, your rep count. They're going to have you get some forced reps in there. They're going to tell you to stop because your technique is trash. Like having another set of eyes on you in prep for any show, any competition is going to be beneficial.
I think most people don't hold their poses as long as they need to when they're practicing by themselves.
Yeah.
Because you are the one making the call of when you're tired or you don't want to, all right, I'm done. I hit that pose.
Yeah.
But a judge or a posing coach can't feel your feelings or your body cramping up. They're just looking for the look and getting into that. I mean, it's challenging you to get into that pose as quickly as possible, to execute it as perfectly as possible, and then transition. So it's like literally like, here's the call, execute. So there is a big command of the body when it comes to posing, I think specifically in that category. And shout out to you want to?
Anthony Barbera.
Yeah.
So Coach Barb's on Instagram, and
he's amazing. He did a really good job, although he made TC sweat so much he was standing in a puddle.
oh my gosh! And then I tried to like shake this other guy's hand. He came in there as Barb's training partner Jake. I wiped my hand off on my butt on my underwear. It came back more wet. When I tried.
It was so.
And I shook his hand, and his face was. He was like, "Yeah, thanks, Dick."
Well, they all laughed about it, but
Yeah,
they
they've been there. They know.
They appreciated
Yeah.
his hard work, but
Yeah.
and then you also got great posing advice from.
Yeah, he doesn't really advertise that he.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, ask your Olympians. You're good, and you don't have to be an Olympian to be a good posing coach. I just want to preface that there are some really good posing coaches that know the sport, judges that know the sport, and can very quickly give you feedback and cues to just completely transform your posing. So,
and there are some people who are not pro or judges and they're just innately good at posing.
Yes.
That doesn't mean they're good at coaching. Remember what we talked about. Just because they're good doesn't mean that they're going to be good at teachers.
right.
For me, you asked about the posing sessions and what kind of things it uncovered. Like when they would tell me to do something and I couldn't do it, it was an eye-opener for me that something wasn't working properly. And most of the time it was external rotation in my legs. I feel like I don't know if my, quadratus femoris are not activated.
Which is crazy because you're a sumo deadlifter.
Yeah, but I kind of pulled back from sumo because I'm still getting that hip pain. And
okay.
I feel my hip does not bother me at all when I've worked external rotation in both my legs. And now sometimes I work external rotation in my right leg and it bothers my hip because that lateral hamstring muscle is trying to do that external rotation. It's not supposed to. That's not its job.
Okay.
It could do it, but that's what happens when like a secondary mover tries to pick up for a primary mover job,
Sure.
So I'm getting into this sumo position where your legs are super wide, and now if you couple a lack of hip mobility with weak quadratus femoris muscles, like it's just a recipe for poor form.
Sure.
And, some rounded shoulders in there. So I'm just not there yet. I've deadlifted 700 pounds since I've been injured. I've deadlifted 765 last year, right after the meet that I did in February.
He's just throwing these numbers out here like they're nothing.
Yeah.
I just lifted a house.
No, but I mean so what I'm saying is like
I'm sorry. I'm
just because you're
in a
strong,
roasting mood for TC today, everyone. So.
That's okay. We're used to it. Yeah, but just because you're strong or you can move some weight doesn't mean that you're doing it as efficiently as you could be.
Right. Exactly.
So I've pulled back a little bit from deadlifts. You and I both determined that squats have been doing, immense benefits for getting our lats and our obliques and our abdominals reconnected with each other. Right? So we have a shoulder girdle and our hip complex, and they're kind of separated because of various injuries. Like your back generally hurts because of your scoliosis, and with my back injury. So like your core gets turned off, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So we're reconnecting everything, and because with the bar on your back, it pushes everything down, and it gives you the opportunity to extend against that. So I'm building that back up, and once I get back to where I was on that, I'll probably start deadlifting again. But yeah.
Great job.
Thanks, babe.
Okay, so do you want to talk about nutrition now?
Sure.
Now that I gave you the green light?
Yeah.
Nutrition, go.
Yeah. So powerlifting nutrition for a bodybuilder.
Yeah, let's.
No, wait.
Yeah, let's.
It
Okay.
doesn't work that way.
Powerlifting. So,
I will say that Chris has felt like pretty run down during some of her workouts, and I've picked on her to halfway tongue in cheek and told her that's because you don't have your fruit snacks.
or my donuts.
Yep.
Listen, powerlifters look like they're having a great time
they got
all the
made, yep.
time in the gym. They have there's sometimes I look over and they got a buffet. They have
We're well fed. We're hitting
candy
PRs.
and donuts, and they're like chatting it up.
Sharing.
It's like a social thing over there between sets, and they're having a great time. They're laughing. They just look like they're having the time of their life. And you look over on the other side of the gym, there's all the bodybuilders staring at themselves
Yeah,
in
they
the
got
mirror.
their hoods up, their earphones in, they're questioning all of their life choices. Do I really have to tan again this weekend?
Why am I suffering so much for this? Listen, yes. But
So, okay, but in all seriousness, nutrition, right?
yes.
So yeah, the first year I met Chris, I was working exceptionally hard to impress her with my athletic prowess.
I was about to prep too for a show that year. The year that we met, I was
Yeah.
starting to. I was
She
still,
prepped for her Tahoe show.
yeah, I
in
wasn't dieting
September.
quite yet when we met, but I was getting close to that point. Like I was starting laser.
We dieted.
focus.
We had the Ben and Jerry's diet for a week. You lost like 5 pounds.
Oh, that was just celebrating finding the love of my life.
Yeah. All the cortisol release. You lost some weight for
He's
the
like,
Ben
"Do
and
you want
Jerry's
ice
diet.
cream?" The first night, I was like, "I'll just take a couple bites of yours."
Yeah, by the end of that week, how much were you having?
A lot. It was a celebration of our love over ice cream.
Yeah, it was great.
But I did actually lose weight. It was wild.
It was
So,
stress. But we've seen that, since then. We've seen stress like completely destroy any lines.
Stress is
in your
my
physique. Yeah.
vein of my existence.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we were talking about that podcast is perceived stress is most of our stress and where it comes from.
Yes.
And just kind of trying to shift our mentality, which you and I both have been doing a lot of work on that. So,
But yeah, so you're
okay.
impressing me.
Yeah, so you came down the first time you came down to go to make this 6-hour road trip down to my mom's house in North Carolina.
Yeah, I
to
don't
this
think
junk
people
car.
understand the weirdness
Oh my
of
gosh,
how we
yeah,
met.
it was very weird, and I'm surprised you stuck around, but I thank God for it every day. But anyway, she showed up. I had a cooler full of food because look, I prep food too.
Bonus points for that one.
Yeah, so up to that point, I did pay attention to my eating, and when I cut weight, it wasn't idiotic. I didn't just cut out all my food for 2 weeks and drop 20 pounds. Like, it was over a month's time period, like probably 6-8 months. I would cut the 20 or 30 pounds or whatever I needed, because man, I think at the time I was walking around, I might get up to like 215, and then I would cut down to 183 for those meets that I did. So at one point, yeah, I got up to 235. Yeah, that was fun. So that's not the nutrition that we're talking about. So let's rewind again, because I keep going off track. And back to the first year that we met. Started out with a cooler full of food and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the gas station trip down.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. And it turned into me cutting for that powerlifting meet in July,
Yes.
which I ended up signing up for because I had signed up for Raw Nationals that year, but then it got canceled because of COVID. So I found one. It was in July. I think I found it like a couple months beforehand. We cut. I got down to like 1,800 calories. Had some glute striations. I mean,
I remember seeing that.
I woke up the morning of at 187 and had to sauna cut the rest of the weight.
Oh my gosh.
It took me 5 hours to cut that 4 pounds. People do not do that. I lost 50 kilos off my total.
Yeah.
So I went 5 for 9. I almost bombed out on squats and deadlifts.
But that's interesting because nutrition was a big part of our first year together.
Yeah.
We both decided to diet the first year we were together.
Yeah, and having said that about my total with the sauna cut, my numbers and my training was astronomical that year because I was hitting my protein goals. I was actually getting enough protein, which in the past I was not. I know I wasn't. I was arbitrarily having like a protein scoop with my pre-workout. I would have a case and shake at night. I had 3 square meals, but there's no way that I was getting as much protein as it was with you.
When you track it, you realize how much.
Yeah, so I developed, I was getting enough protein. I started thinking about macro timing. So like carbohydrates before my workouts. I loved having my bowl of cereal before my big heavy powerlifting workouts. And then we would eat whatever, like whether it was a protein shake or whatever after the workout. So
Were you using a food scale?
yes.
Because I had brought mine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say when you started tracking, I started tracking as well because I knew I was gonna do Raw Nationals at the very least.
So I guess I just didn't track the week that I met you. Because after that,
It was a while.
I had to get,
so you're
I had to get my, because I was a habitual track and weigh and measure everything. So I kind of went AWOL when I met you for a week, I guess.
I don't think it was just the week because I feel like that trip was one, and then you came down again, and it was the second time that we went to my mom's house that I took you to cookout.
Okay, we're getting really far
Went to
off
Fitness
track.
Warehouse. Yeah. Okay.
But anyhow, so
So macronutrient timing and amount pushed me to all of my current PRs.
there you go. Yeah.
Every PR that I have right now, I set that year. So 650 squat, 427 bench, 805 deadlift, all of those sub 195 body weight. And I'm going to say it was because of the, diet and the training like schedule, right? Like we would wake up, have breakfast together, I'd train, I'd go work for, 6 hours, and I'd come back, we eat dinner together, watch some TV and go to sleep, right? So like we were living an athletic lifestyle too. Which again, that was like the first time for me as well. And I'm sure my cortisol levels were lower because like you said, I'm in a brand new relationship with this girl who I am absolutely positive is 100% perfect for me. So yeah, I think like a lot of factors lined up that year for very beneficial performance changes. And I'm looking forward to re-entering the powerlifting scene officially, and my goal is to do a bodybuilding show on a Saturday and a powerlifting meet on Sunday, and at the powerlifting meet I want to total 10 times my body weight.
So eat your chicken and steak.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so nutrition has become a part of living your athlete lifestyle as a powerlifter, because no matter what sport you're wanting to do, I think the more components you have that facilitate good training sessions and good
performance.
output, you'll reap the benefits of it. So you may not need to count every single macro as minutely like detailed as a bodybuilder who's like scraping to get those crazy levels of body fat, but being intentional,
Yes,
I think, is the message here.
Yeah, because powerlifters are generally not going to have to cut to paper thin skin, right? So and that's where that like the exactly precise macronutrient counts come into play.
Correct.
Because we're trying to maximize our lean muscle mass retention while also maximizing our fat loss, which is a very tedious line to walk. I like it. I've been enjoying it recently. I've been enjoying seeing myself lean out. And it's also kind of beneficial for me that I'm just starting to squat heavy again. So my squat numbers are still going up. It's not like it's coming down because I'm dieting and I'm getting weaker. I'm actually just getting stronger in my squat because like up until my show in July, I had like 3 leg days all year. So my legs are, I'm going to say they're deconditioned and they're primed for growth right now.
Sure.
I'm gonna say. But yeah, the nutrition aspect really, if you're a powerlifter, I would just suggest that you weigh yourself on a regular basis. Doesn't have to be daily, but on a regular basis, and track your protein intake. Make sure you're getting enough protein, at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. And I actually aim for like 10 or 15 or 20 over that. So like right now I'm weighing 189 and I'm aiming for like 205 to 210 grams of protein. So my calories are super low too. I mean, I'm at like 2,000, 2,100. So that plays a role. Like, you kind of bump your protein up when you get low calories.
Well, you can.
Yeah, you can.
But
Which we didn't. We actually just kept it the same.
correct.
Right. I've been trying to hit 210, and I've just been getting lighter. I've been trying to hit 210 since I was 200 pounds. So
Well, I think that's what happened. Like as your body weight goes down, the actual calculation of protein per gram of body weight becomes higher. So
Yeah.
if you can maintain
just
that
percentage, yeah.
protein content, you're in pretty good, especially for the aesthetic goals that you have set.
yeah, and we can go into why later.
Yeah.
Do that in a different podcast.
But I would say for me, coming from a sport where all the detail, like those fine little details of nutrition matter, it actually was refreshing to be partnered with somebody that was a little bit more relaxed with, and not completely. It wasn't like, okay, babe, I'm going to have IHOP and then McDonald's, and then we're going to have like a tub of ice cream. Is that cool? Like it was, you had a standard of nutrition that you wanted to set, but outside of like prepping for a bodybuilding competition, it was healthy for me to see a more relaxed approach to calorie intake. And you actually had made the suggestion of like, what do you think about just tracking protein and tracking calories? I remember you suggesting that to me, and I thought my head was going to fall off my body. I was like, that makes no sense. Why would anyone do that? I'm a bodybuilder. Stay in your powerlifting lane. But then I did it because I was tired of, I was so fatigued of just using the mental energy to
You're
track
worrying about everything.
every gram of fat and carb. Like there's a time and a place for that, but I was never relaxed because I was always trying to calculate everything. And so like actually knowing that outside of a show and a prep dieting phase that I could have a little bit more leniency, and it didn't have to just like, even refeed meals were calculated and tracked. Okay, I'm going to have exactly this many calories over. These are the sources it's going to come from. I couldn't go to a restaurant and just sit down and enjoy something. It was like a mind game. And so that's where I think like a little bit more of a relaxed approach that came from, you know, your experience with powerlifting actually benefited me as a bodybuilder because like we had mentioned earlier, cortisol levels and stress can come from anything and perceived stress. So my nutrition did not need to be a source of stress for me, especially in a building phase.
Well, and that's the other aspect, right? So that made it so that you weren't ready to prep again. Because
I was so burnt out.
Yeah, you're already feeling like you've been in prep all year already, and now you have to cut calories too.
Yeah.
So it just, I feel like it gives you the potential of really alleviating that stress so that you're mentally prepared. Because then, like we talked about, you're seeing the blurred lines. You're going to want to start cutting anyway. But because you don't have the mental stress from your off season of having to track everything, you're more mentally prepared and ready to dive back in and, you know, grab the bull by the horns again, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that has carried over into, you know, I've competed this year working with a prep coach that allows for, actually encourages.
Yeah.
And then I have TC and
Work-life balance, yeah.
Coach Paul encouraging me to not be perfect and just relax a little bit with nutrition.
Which she's doing great with, by the way.
It takes effort. When you're a perfectionist and you're used to something a certain way, it takes a lot to let go. You feel like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Or you're breaking the rules, or I'm letting my goals out of my sight, and that's not true at all. Like I said, time and place for everything. So
yeah, and like you said, your body sees all stress the same. So if you're stressing about your food, that cortisol is catabolic. You're not building as much muscle as you can. So every single time you're stressing about something, just remind yourself, I'm rooting my gains.
oh my gosh.
So that's the third aspect, the third leg of how power building is beneficial for bodybuilders and powerlifters, right? Is the mentality. So we have the training aspect, we have the nutrition aspect, and the mentality. So yeah, we kind of joked around tongue in cheek earlier about the powerlifting diet for the bodybuilder, but that you need that in the off season, right? You need to have that more relaxed nature so that you can put more focus on other things.
Yes.
And generally speaking, it's going to be your training, and we want to be able to push as hard as we can in the gym during these months, because like you also mentioned, when you're depleted, you can't push as hard. So we got to build as much muscle as possible so that we have as much muscle as possible to hold on to for your dieting phase.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a mentality aspect that's different for a powerlifter and a bodybuilder. I think that they both come with a strong will to achieve goals, but the pendulum swings in like both directions. You can get too far into the like hyper focused, and then it becomes a stressful activity in your life and you don't want to do it anymore, or you can become too relaxed and you lose focus of where you're going. And I'm not saying that bodybuilding is always hyper focused and powerlifting is always too relaxed. I think that happens for anybody in either sport.
Well, like I said, I mean, I was too focused on my powerlifting.
Yeah.
I was doing squat, bench, deadlift,
There
and
you
that's
go.
not
Yeah.
all I was doing, right? I would do like 2 or 3 other exercises. And you look at some of the elite lifters, and that's what they said they did anyway. So, like, I don't necessarily know that I was doing anything wrong, but I hurt myself.
Sure.
So, I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And I think too, like each sport sometimes takes on the characteristics of a certain type of person. Like, and I think that you can have both. So you can be really strong and look really good. And I think that's something that a lot of males look for, and women are more fearful. They're more fearful of the strong component.
Yeah, because I think blocky.
Yeah, they want to look good, but they're really afraid that I'm going to build too much muscle. I'm going to look like a man. I'm going to have giant traps and huge waist. And
Yeah, they can all go talk to Brett Contreras as athletes. Hip thrusting 700 pounds.
It's wild. And I think that that's something that maybe we should touch on as far as like what power building looks like for a female.
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
and-
because there is a huge stigma, right? With, you know, how females should look. And when they don't look a certain way, you know, they feel a certain way about it.
Sure.
And that's all going to be like societal norms. I'm going to say it's self-imposed, because if you don't care about anyone else, then you don't care about anyone else. But,
Sure.
you know, it's also easier said than done to
Right.
just not care, right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier that I wanted to remind everyone how hard it is to build muscle. Okay?
Yes.
You want bigger glutes as a girl? How long have you been working for those bigger glutes? And how much bigger have they gotten? And you're worried about what? Getting too big too fast?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something that you're not even going to actively try to build, you think is going to get bigger than you want it to get. So that's usually the first way that I approach this. Strong does not mean big and blocky.
Correct.
You know, and if you actually look at powerlifters, the goal of their training is strength without mass. Added strength without added mass. Because then that's going to make it harder for you to fit into your weight class. So for me personally, the past couple of years, my training has been me trying to build into the 90 kilo class, because, oh man, that last cut to 83 kilos, it hurt. You know, it that was my last cut to
We
83.
also got a
Yeah.
DEXA. Yeah, we got a DEXA and saw where his lean body mass was, and we weren't revisiting that number again.
Yeah, so which is funny because now I'm like 189, but like we talked about, I haven't been working legs very much.
Correct.
So I've lost some pounds of muscle in my legs and my lower body, so that we can kind of even out the proportions, and now I have
Right.
more up top. But okay, so for me that was a little different because I was trying to build into the next weight class up, and obviously if anyone else is trying to do that, that's going to be their goal too. But for by and large, powerlifters try to increase their lifts without increasing their body weight, and doing that, it's a lot of neuromuscular adaptation. It's a lot of technique proficiency, so just learning how to do something better, and then being able to replicate that exact technique in the proficient manner that you've learned to execute it in. So there are a couple different aspects there, but as long as you are being intentional with your lifting and you're not just arbitrarily throwing as much weight as you can and recruiting whatever muscles you need to recruit in order to move that weight, as long as you're being intentional, you're not going to have any adverse side effects from lifting heavy. You're going to build the muscles that you want to build, and that's it. So, you have something?
No, you're doing a good job.
Oh, okay. It looked like you want to say something. So yeah, just that's really what it boils down to, is just be intentional, put maximum effort to your compound lifts, and then carry over that same maximum effort to your accessories, and make sure that you're maintaining torso rigidity so that whatever muscle you're trying to isolate is properly anchored. If your muscle is not properly anchored, you're going to work more than that one muscle. You might still work that muscle, but you're not going to work it as efficiently as you could be working it. And you're also going to be working other muscles. You're going to be putting more mileage on your body than is necessary. So this intentionality, just like, it compounds, like compounding interest, right? Like, not only are your gains multiplied, but your body doesn't feel as beat up at the end of the day, you know? So like, I feel like I make pretty decent progress for the amount of effort that I put into the gym, but it's because I'm putting so much more mental effort into my lifts than the average lifter. It's not even funny. You know, there's no comparison.
And I think there's degrees of power building depending on who you are and the sport that is like most near and dear to your heart. So for women, you can have the big three in your programming.
You should have.
But that's not necessarily, I mean, that's not all you're doing. So you are still putting in work that's sculpting your physique. But
and again, if you're intentional about what's being activated, you are truly chiseling, you're sculpting, because you're choosing what muscles are being worked. And when you reach that level, when you're able to specifically choose, I want to work my lower lats with these pull-ups versus I want to work my upper back with these pull-ups. Man, when you can do that, it's a complete game changer for your training. Complete.
I think too, the varying of rep ranges and loads and even like eccentric work, having that intertwined in compounds lifts. I know, because we were just kind of like focusing on women. It brings you the best of both worlds. So you're a strong individual walking around. You're not doing tons of work that's going to build just like a blocky frame. But I will tell you from personal experience, since I've been on the pro stage recently, these bikini athletes, you know, the smallest of the female bodybuilding athletes at the pro level, they're walking around like,
they're muscular.
Oh my gosh. The abs, the lat thickness, the shoulder development. What you see on a picture or what you see on the screen is not what you see in person. It was like eye-opening to me. I have never felt so small and petite in my entire life. And if I post pictures, I look like really proportionate, really big. There's ways to make your physique look a certain way on social media in a still shot. But being in person, like looking at these people in person, like that girl has a lot of muscle, or that girl does not have a waist that's 2 inches around. She actually has solid obliques. And if she is like straight on, she has abs.
Yeah.
Like she has a waist. It's not completely diminished.
Issa.
Quad splits. No one has a waist like Issa. Issa's untouchable in her waist. But that was my point, is that told me, looking at these physiques, like, wow, I need to work on that. I need to work on that. I have so much more room before I even get close to looking like a monster or a man or like blocky and huge. Like that is hard to achieve.
Yeah.
And so like Gen Pop people, I would not stress at all. I think another thing that people get afraid of is where their body fat distribution is for a woman.
Yeah.
They think, I have really big legs.
Yeah.
I don't want to train legs. You may just carry more body fat in your legs, because I see that disconnect when people are looking at entering into bodybuilding. They're like, I got really big legs. I should be a wellness competitor. That's not necessarily true. You might just carry more body fat in your legs. That doesn't mean there's muscle there. And in the sport, they're judging muscle.
Yeah, let's see what's under there first.
Right. So just be careful when you're doing your body assessment. And just because you have body fat in one area doesn't mean you shouldn't train it. Or people do the opposite and they overtrain it.
Yeah.
They're like, man, I just don't want to have fat in my inner thighs. I'm going to do the adduction machine forever and ever and ever. I'm raising my hand because I used to be one of those people, and then got away from it because I wanted to because I thought that I was making my legs too big. And both ends of the spectrum are not helping get the physique that you're looking for. Those nice slender legs, full glutes. I mean, I think most women want to, and you don't have to have slender legs. You can have really big jacked legs.
It's not how big you are, it's how big you look. Right?
Yeah.
So how do we train adductors now? You want me to talk about it?
Yeah.
So it's for strength, right? We're not doing a bunch of hypertrophy work. We're not doing rep after rep. We're using the seated adduction machine. We're doing pauses in the open position to open up the hips to make it a little easier for your glute medius and glute max to do that abduction external rotation. And we're doing stuff like Copenhagen adductions to where your adductors are being stimulated to stabilize your pelvis,
Which is body weight.
Yeah. So, and because at the end of the day, that's all we need them for.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to be strong enough to stabilize your pelvis with however much weight you want to hip thrust. So
Yes, because when I didn't train adductors and try to hip thrust, and I still experience some of this as I'm reaching heavier loads, my legs cannot stay still. They just vibrate back and forth because those muscles that hold my hips in place are so weak, and my glutes are they're stronger because I've been training them longer. I've now reached a plateau of how I can't train my glutes anymore because the rest of my muscles are like, forget it, we're out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. That's perfect. Yeah, because that's exactly the problem is we start to see, this kind of decline in your performance in the lifts that you want to be making progress in. So that's, again, going back to the intentionality that we utilize here. Yes, you're going to train your entire body. But when you see an athlete whose entire body is conditioned, look at their training regimen, and they're training their entire body.
Correct.
Now we've got to talk about this. This is another thing that you've kind of railed at me against, but
You're smiling like you're about to get in trouble.
Spa fat training.
Yeah. That has crossed my mind a lot, actually. Go ahead, you can.
No, go ahead.
Well, the whole theory of, just like I talked about, getting on the adduction machine.
You can't do a bunch of crunches to get rid of your belly fat.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I'm just going to train this area of my body so that it burns all of the body fat away in that specific area. I've never seen really a solid scientific study that says that actually works. There has been some studies that have come out that have been a little bit conflicting in edging towards the point that you actually can reduce fat deposits in an area where you are training that muscle group. Again, there's nothing concrete, and
there's
a lot of debate.
Yeah, I want to say it was Jeff Nippert. He talked about a study that was it Jeff Nippert?
I've heard Paul. I think Paul.
I don't know. There's a study or two, but here's what you have to remember about studies. It's generally done in either untrained, like general population individuals. It's very hard to find athletic studies, and this may have been an athletic study, but the data that they got from it was, I'm going to say, scientifically inconclusive, they said. But anecdotally speaking, I have noticed that when I start to get lean, the last places I lose body fat are the places that I don't work as often as the other places. So the very first place I'm going to lose body fat is my arms and shoulders. That's most men, right? Like there are guys walking around with beer bellies and striations in their delts because they work with their arms and shoulders all day, and they have poor scapular control, and they're not using their back muscles, so their delts are getting that entire workload. So every single day they're doing like 500 reps of whatever they're doing, and they're getting nice defined arms and shoulders. For me, I've noticed that my midsection or my legs lean out last. And now, generally speaking, for a guy, your midsection is going to lean out last. Okay, that makes sense.
And low back.
But what really started to open my eyes up was this year, the amount of fat that was still on my legs when I went on that stage in July. And it's because, like I said, I had not been doing leg day. I would do one every once in a while. I would hit the leg press, just to like kind of make myself feel good, I guess, an ego boost. I can fill it up in a Planet Fitness. But I was not hitting leg day like I normally do. And now that I am, my legs are leaning out so fast. It's crazy. Now my theory is that these muscles need, and especially in a deficit, they need energy, right? Obviously. So first, obviously, they're going to go to glycogen stores. They're going to go to blood glucose, and then they're going to go towards like fat, like oxidative, the Krebs cycle. And
Krebs cycle.
and I would imagine that it would be most efficient to get that energy from fat stores that are right next door to that muscle being worked. Okay, so now if you are 30% body fat, you are not going to spot train anything. Okay, nothing. Okay, so get in your kitchen, develop your meal plan, figure out what you're going to do, lose your body fat, get down to like single digit body fat amounts. Okay, for guys. For girls, like I'm going to say like low teens.
That's pretty lean. Low teens is pretty lean for a girl.
Yeah, but that's where I think that you're visually going to actually see these spot training effects.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so for some of our girls specifically, like you talked about, the posterior chain, like the glutes and the hamstrings, is always the last part of the condition to come in. So we've started putting a little more work in trying to tighten that up. But not just for this anecdotal spot fat training theory, but more so towards like muscle activation and hip control, so that we can actually position our body exactly the way we want to position it to best showcase our physique on stage. So I do some stuff that is not necessarily accepted as like factual, and I understand that. My last job at the R&D lab is an engineering facility. I'm not an engineer. I still developed processes that we ended up patenting, and they're still being used by the military today. So,
well, I think people really can sometimes lean on science too much in sports, but you have to remember that science is about experimentation.
yeah,
That's the root of where it is. So you should be pushing the envelope, trying new things. That's part of what science is. It's not just hard and fast facts. This is what the study said, so this is what we need to do.
trust the science.
Yeah, there's thanks. Yeah. There's just a lot to it. So well, I think that we have expanded on this. Hopefully we've done power building justice. We've really talked about a lot of different things here. Is there anything you wanted to conclude with, or any other points we missed?
I don't think so. Yeah,
All right.
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think this was really good. So if you, how do we want to outro this?
So like and subscribe, whether you're on a podcast platform, YouTube platform.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, it really helps us out. If you give like a review on a podcast platform or a comment on like YouTube or whatever, that really helps us out. My Instagram handle is longshotgamble, all one word. Chris's is Chris Nicole _IFBB Pro. And our business Instagram is reckless _training.
Yeah, on Instagram. So you can feel free to message all of those.
Yep. Yeah, reach out to us if you have any questions. I love doing forum reviews. So if you have a video you want to send over, squat, bench, deadlift, any kind of accessory movement, hip thrust, lat pull down, pull-ups, doesn't matter. Send me a video. I'll send you a Loom review on it.
Let us know what you want to hear, what you like, what thoughts you want to hear from TC or I.
Yep.
We're here to help. Just contribute to the fitness industry. Again, these are all of our thoughts and theories, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, but hopefully you did learn something from this podcast. So if you like it, let us know.
Yep. And just remember, work hard, stay humble, stay hungry, and train reckless.